Hello, welcome to another edition of Low Code Campfire. This is number 96 for May 5th, 2023. And I am Dale Warner, your host, and what am I? Head of support for Plantinap. This is an all skill levels welcome meeting where we talk about low code and Plantinap and deal with questions and help strategize how to solve problems. So do engage with us. We meet this hour every Friday. All the past episodes are recorded and you can find them out on youtube.com/Plantinap. We will do this agenda every something like this every week where we say hi, and then the main one is first call. We rarely get beyond that, but if we do, we'll talk about some of the other things like feature requests and any submitted topics. And after an hour or so, we'll go into our afterglow segment where we'll chat for a minute off the record. We'll turn the recording off, but do engage with us. This is just a free-flowing conversation. If you have noise going on behind you, it's great to mute. Otherwise, be nice, and I'll let you know you can submit questions and topics in advance for this or for the Low Code Cafe for that matter. You can use that QR code or the link that's in the emails that we send to you. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Hey, hey.
Hello.
And since everyone's that's here today has been here before, we have no newbies to introduce. Although as I'm thinking about this, Dennis, you joined, was it last week or 2 weeks ago? I don't know if we made the offer to include you in the Low Code Campfire website, the shared site where we have lots of solutions pre-designed. But if you want to be part of that, we'd be happy to add you. All right, first call, somebody.
Dale, Jerry here. No issues this morning. I was just going to let you know that I'm going to be being a bit of a voyeur today. I'm going to turn my camera off and multitask here on my computer. If somebody has a question for me, I might be a little slow to get back on, but I am listening. Okay. And I loved your comment on your opening dialogue about how we rarely get past opening call. Did I hear that right? I think I heard you say we rarely get past option one, but that's funny.
Yeah, well, it is, but then again, I couldn't remember who I was or why I was here. So,
all right. And then the last thing I'm going to say is I think Dennis was trying to answer you, but he's still muted. He's going to have to learn how to work the mute and unmute button. So once he comes online, comes unmuted, I'm sure he'll be tickled.
Okay, I'm unmuted.
Part of our Campfire website and everything that we do there, because there's some tremendous things over there that I've yet to teach him on. But I'm going to mute, turn my camera off, and just listen and work at the same time. Thank you for all you do.
Fair enough. So I have one first call that I wanted to mention. We had a user that reported a problem with the hot fixes that we released yesterday. And so this would be for 1.24, the newest hotfixes released yesterday. So unless you're just on a development system, even though those came in as recommended, I would not recommend them at the moment. I just got to them half an hour ago, so I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that we're going to have to fix those. Somebody else for a first call. I know some of you were along for the Low Code Cafe on Wednesday with Mark Roberts and a quick introduction into integrating with Chat GPT. Any thoughts or feedback, or has this started to change the way that you're thinking about your applications?
This is Mark. Yeah, I know. I've definitely been thinking about it since watching that presentation.
It looked relatively easy to do, to set that up. I can think of a number of possibilities for the things that I've got going on where I would include the possibility of Chat GPT and AI, the way he did it, and probably some evolutions of that as well. I think it's very exciting.
I think the word that you mentioned, evolutions, is very key, because there's, as you begin to get a hold of it and understand what you can do, then it expands into what else you can do.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah. Oh, and Mark joined us. Good morning, Mark. Thanks for jumping in.
Yes, good presentation. Thank you for putting it on, Mark and Dale.
Part of the just thinking in terms of my evolution on this, part of my journey has been that, I mean, we've kind of all seen a little bit, perhaps, where you can go to Chat GPT, or like the app that Mark built, is just a Plantain app version of talking with Chat GPT. But the idea that I mean, you start out with, I'm going to ask it something, or get it to respond, and it does, which is amazing all in itself. But the evolution for me was that in that you can provide instructions as well as content. So, for example, to tell it what it is that what role you want it to fill, and then give it a subject to work on, it'll take those two things and combine them. So, I mean, in the simplest, probably the easiest way to explain that would be if you were you can give it the instruction that it's reading, you're going to present it with an email dialogue, and your goal is to get an appointment, communicate a failure, whatever the goal is. When it will combine your instructions with the email that you paste in there and come up with a response. It starts to just really leverage the power of the thing.
Yeah, honestly, that's the part that I think is an immediate challenge for me, and probably some others, is understanding and learning the right way to interact with it. You know, what can I ask? How can I ask it? How can I refine what I get? Those are things we need to learn. And I wonder if there's an app in there that just plain makes that process easier, an app idea. You know, one of us could build it. Mark, you're halfway there.
Well, I would say don't miss the next Low Code Cafe.
All right.
We've there's many of us working on that topic within Plantain app, and we've recently recruited Patrick into it too. So no one is immune. We're all jumping on this bandwagon. All right. What else?
Hey, everybody. Sorry, I joined late. But I do have, I may post this. I don't know if it would be best to post this in the community, but I know we, like on that presentation I did we did Chat GPT, but I've been also integrating Stability.AI, which is an image generator separate from DALL-E, which is OpenAI. But this Stability.AI allows us to generate an image, but then it also has the ability to pass that image. You can pass this image back into, you can post an image back into it to generate new versions of the image.
Mm-hmm.
And I have been getting stuck on that. Calling the original image has not a problem for it to create a new image, but the trying to post back to try to send an image to get recreated has been a problem. And I think it's not looking for base 64. It's actually looking for a true, I think, binary data of the image. And I've been racking my head trying to figure out how to actually do that. So I may post that in the actual, the example of the API call that they're looking for, to see if there's a way that we can actually do that within Plantain app.
So when you said that they're not expecting a base 64, that kind of took any answer that I had away. I assumed that it was.
Yeah, let me actually, is there a way that I can post? Let me post this in the chat. I want to send I'll send a link to the actual API call that we're doing for this. And I found a third party that would allow us to pass base 64. But it costs a little bit more. It'd be great if this one could actually do it. And it may be just a formatting issue on my side, but from what I could see, it's not looking for base 64. And they, it seems like Python is kind of the major code that they usually look for, but then they also have Go curl, TypeScript.
So it's the init image that you're trying to
Yep.
as a binary. Do they have a example of what that?
They do a little bit, but then it just says very long string, unfortunately.
Image binary. So
and so there's two API calls within here that would be useful. One is this image to image, which would create a new version of an original image. So like, let's say if you even uploaded your own picture, you could run it through this image to image API call to create a new one. Or they also have the image to image upscale, which would be nice. And that way it would bring it up to a higher resolution. Because what I'm seeing with a lot of these tools is it'll give you a fairly low resolution image that's great for web, but not so great if you wanted to do any kind of print or anything with it. I
need to note that you asked Google instead of OpenAI.
I'm old-fashioned.
Well, it's funny too, because this is kind of a competitor of OpenAI, since it's I wonder what their answer actually would even be.
Well, so I see, I mean, without actually doing it online here, I see that there's some suggested JavaScript. You can execute JavaScript actions within Plantain app, so I'm guessing that might be a possibility. And now I'm going to go with Patrick's suggestion that maybe we should just ask.
Yeah, and and I've tried to. I use, so it maybe actually there's formatting error on my side, because I've used Postman as well to try to pass it through to test, and I'm still coming up with that same error. And unfortunately, it doesn't give you a detailed error. It just says bad. So what what I have done though to get around it is actually, it gets a little bit more expensive. Is there is a, let's see, image. Let's see if I find it. Image. So okay, so I've been able to put this in. So this site, this replicate.com is interesting. It allows they have their own APIs, and I think it's basically running. So I'm calling this API, which I believe is calling the stability image to image API to make it happen. But it's the lag time is pretty significant doing this, and it's quite a bit more expensive as well.
I'm happy to take up any other topic, but in the absence, I'm just going to play with this. Something that might not be too hard.
Yeah, that'd be great. I can't tell you how many hours I spent trying to work on that.
So we'll add a upload of a file, and then when they upload, we're going to, and this is going to give us a base 64 here somewhere. Yeah, base 64. So let's, just for fun, now you can see how much fun I am. Right? We'll put a have a base 64 field just to show that part of it works. So we'll do a submit button. We'll call this, yeah, just submit, and we will say that we want to put the base 64 where it's visible. So base 64 is going to get the value of, whoops. And we'll do an Ajax call so the screen will refresh. So not doing anything magical yet, just getting an image. File. And we get a base 64 back. It looks like that. So then going to implement our JavaScript. We have this function. What is it not happy? Oh, those are all right. So calling this looks something like this. So now I don't know what to do with binary data. We have I'll put it in token. Put it in a large text too and see what happens.
Does the last line of your JavaScript there need a semicolon at the end on that return?
Thank you. This is why I don't program alone. Yeah, it didn't like that. This actually should already be there. Let's do this.
Yes, that's what I was going to say.
What?
Just said wrap it. Is that what you're going to do, or no? Something else?
Wrap it in quotes? Or,
Yeah.
Need to be is not defined.
I love it when it apologizes.
Wow, I'm really impressed what it's doing here.
Well, Ben, I didn't see you join. Maybe you... Oh, Ben, you have your hand up even. So polite.
Yes, I didn't want to interrupt. Hi all, sorry I came a couple minutes late. I know you're working on this thing, so I don't want to interrupt what you're working on, but I do have my own questions to see if anyone can give me ideas.
Okay, well, tell you what, we'll try one more stab at this, but and then we'll go on to your question.
Has anybody else on the call been down this this road, a few times, or you start the question and then give it feedback about errors you're getting, and then it gives you a new set of code. How many people have been through this?
It was pretty slick.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
So one of the things that I did there is I didn't have the length turned up from 256, so it broke it into 2 parts. So I'm going to have to take it into a couple of spots here, but I don't think that's going to be a problem. So we got that one, and okay, so we'll let that go. But there's probably an answer in there using JavaScript and our action. There's probably other things that could be done. Oh, Ben, take us down another path.
Oh, that's a dangerous request from me. The rabbit holes I can send everyone down. As you know, I've briefly chatted with you on this, Oracle. I've posted it in the community. I am having such a hard time with this. Small batches of data, not too bad, but I have this one table that currently has 8 million records. Yeah, 7.9. By the end of the school year, this is going to be closer to 30 million. And it is running exceedingly slow. And because of all of the time limit restrictions, the timeouts for SQL, there's a lot of issues because I hit the 30-second timeout. Or in some cases, well, the 30-second timeout is the one that really kills me. Right now, the way I have this working is I have a link server on my SQL to an Oracle database. I'm using OpenQuery to pass a SQL statement over to Oracle to compile the data. Oracle returns the data to SQL, and then either SQL does something or passes it to the browser, the server. When I pass the data from SQL to the IIS server, for example, in using SQL to entity list, the problem doing that was that it was eating a monstrosity amount of memory on that IIS server. And I had the same problem with that 30-second timeout. If that create SQL list didn't return data in 30 seconds, it would time out. So I couldn't use that method. So I changed gears, and what I ended up doing was now when the data gets passed from Oracle to the SQL server, SQL create a temporary table and dump all the data into a temporary table. Now, here's the extra added funness to this. Again, because of the amount of data that is being pulled, and I want the user to see something happening. If I just pull, let's say for argument's sake, I make that SQL statement with a timeout of 30 minutes, just so that I could pull all the data in one shot, one SQL statement, they could potentially be sitting there for 20 minutes and not see any updates. So what I did is I tried to paginate the data that I'm getting from Oracle, so that in between each data page pull, I can update the status and let them know, hey, I'm doing some more. I'm still working on data. Right now, I have the pagination at 3 million records. And it's still taking a ridiculous amount of time just to pull that data. I'm running it right now. So between page 1 and page 2 pull, I have the 14 minutes it took to pull 3 million records. So my question is, does anyone know of a different way, and especially a faster way of pulling large batches of data out of a third-party Oracle system?
So backing up a second, if anybody has the answer, please jump in. I'm just going to ask questions until I understand a little bit better, but if you have the answer, jump in. You mentioned having set the timeout, set it to run for 30 minutes to pull the data. Under that scenario, where you're not getting any feedback to the user, does it finish in 30 minutes, get all your data, or do you know?
I haven't tried it, only because I really don't want to go that route. I can, but I'd prefer not to, because again, then the person is just basically staring at a grid that says like compiling data, and they'll just be staring at it for, basically I was clocking it for every, I don't even know why this took 14 minutes on a pull of 3 million. 2 million, something else must be running on the server.
Yeah. Well, and I was wondering, for example, if the
oh, I'm looking at the seconds, not the minutes. I'm sorry. 17, 18, 19, 20. 6 minutes. Sorry. 6 minutes it took to pull 3 million records. Not 14.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if when you paginate it, if behind the scenes Oracle is still having to do all of the work and then just return a 2 million result.
Unfortunately, that's the only way that I know of how to do it. Basically, what I ended up doing was, in my SQL statement that I sent to Oracle, it literally compiles the entirety of the 7.9 million records for each page, but then it does a row numbering.
Yeah.
And then I say only return to me, rows 1 to 3 million, 3
So
million 1 to 6.
You're building in inefficiency on the other side so that you can paginate, versus the fastest way might be to do it in the entirety, but you don't get feedback.
Right.
So I'm wondering if, this feels to me, it feels to me like it should be more of a batch reporting than a interactive reporting.
Well, it is. It is in a sense batching it. It's taking this data and it's just writing a file. It's not a report on screen. But I could show you really quick. Not that it makes any difference. If you let me share my screen.
Yeah, I was just trying to say, I think if you have if you're to the point where you're building it inefficient just so that it can paginate, then that's a problem. So maybe the idea you said that, if a 30-minute run will work and that's going on as the thing would be to try and do it not connected to a browser, like either a scheduled task or an asynchronous task, that you could then run something else that says you have X number of records in the temporary table, select count of ID from table. And so you could see the counter going up and progressing.
You wouldn't. That's the whole problem, because it's one SQL statement. If you don't paginate, you're not going to see data updated until the data gets returned. Because Oracle is not going to return any data until it's done with its SQL statement. So if it takes Oracle 15 minutes to compile the data, for 15 minutes, your temporary table is empty. And then all of a sudden, wham, all this data comes in one shot because now Oracle's returning data. Oracle's not going to return any information, periodically to let you know, to have you put information into a temporary table. So that's what I'm saying. If I do it even that way, it's just going to be a long wait of just nothing. And it is, in a manner of speaking, asynchronous right now. What I do is I basically add a record into a table to kind of do a queue, and there's a trigger saying on record insert, run the command to do the export and start compiling the data. So it's not holding up the browser. They can come out of this page, they can come back to it, and it will always just look at that table, which
But you
will
can't see the
update
progress.
itself with statuses. So they'll be able to see the progress. But
So Jerry came off mute for a second, and he's our large data guy. Did you have an idea, Jerry? Okay.
maybe it was an accidental unmute mute.
He's multitasking. We'll give him grace on that.
No, I'm here, guys.
Hopefully,
I was multitasking. Ben, I heard you say early in the conversation, you're using a linked server to get to access the Oracle server.
Correct.
And so where you lost me a little bit was how you actually do your select statement from the Oracle side. You have to do some fancy stuff to send over a query, or do you have
You
like
basically you build the query as Oracle would expect it. So there are some kind of minute differences in syntax.
Yeah, of course.
But once you build that query statement, you send it over to the Oracle using what's known as an open query statement through SQL.
Okay.
That just basically tells SQL, take this string, which is a SQL query, and just send it to Oracle. Let Oracle deal with it, and I'll just handle the data that it brings back.
Okay. Once you get your data back, which I know that seems to be the bottleneck, is getting the data back. Are you good? Once you get the data back, is everything, speed and everything, come to your liking? And
I'm running it right now, actually. It started at 11:17. It is still running. It is writing the data file right now.
okay.
So it paginated 3 times at 3 million records per page. And like I said, it's writing the file. It started writing the file at 11:35.
Okay.
So it's been doing it for 3 minutes now.
That's what I'm trying to find where the bottleneck is. I'm pretty good inside the SQL world. I understand Oracle, but I do run linked servers from SQL to SQL, and I pull hundreds of thousands of records quite efficiently. And I'm doing that, but the way I'm doing it is I'm keeping all the workload at the SQL Server level through things happening at SQL Server. I try my best to never go through IIS or through the website to do that. Even I don't load entities and do things like that. That's where I tend to get killed. So I try and have my SQL Server doing this work where possible.
Yeah, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I mean, other than the bottleneck that it takes for Oracle to compile the data and send it back to SQL, even SQL writing the data to the table, I think happens pretty fast. It's hard for me to kind of really see because, again, I can only stamp update times when my SQL statement has completed and I move to the next phase and I stamp it like a date time. So it's limited as to what I can see. But it doesn't seem to be that detrimental when it's writing to the table. Now, writing the data to a file, I don't have any choice. I have to pull the data from SQL to the IIS server in order to write the file. So what I'm doing is, in that point, I am doing a select statement to create a list, and then I'm doing list to CSV.
Okay.
The problem I have with that is the default behavior list to CSV encapsulates the data in quotes.
which
Okay.
is problematic. So then even after I write the file, I have to reopen the file using RazorScript and take out all the quotes in every single row, which is just yet another run through the entire file. But that is what it is. I mean, I can't avoid it. I don't know of a faster way of writing the data other than list to CSV. I mean, could I do it where I have a, for example, create a list, process the list, and every single row one at a time, export them out? Absolutely, I could do that. Number one, I don't think that's going to be faster in performance. Number two, it's literally opening and closing the file for every single line of data. And I don't think that in and of itself is going to be good on CPU and system usage either.
Could you use
So-
SQL Server to create your CSV file instead of using our tools inside? Could we create a SQL Server job to create the CSV file? And then it begs the question, is the SQL Server that you're using on the same server as your website, or is it too different? Yeah, there you go. You feel me, don't you, Ben?
Yep.
So,
First off, I don't know if SQL Server can write the CSV file. I will admit, I've never done that. I don't know. Does SQL even have the ability to write something to the hard drive?
yeah.
I'm not familiar with that, but the second issue to that is, like you just said, it's two separate servers. Now, what I could potentially do is create a junction link from the IIS to a SQL folder. So I could still write the CSV file. If SQL can do it, I can write the CSV file to the local system. And then through that junction link, which is basically a shared folder, the IIS server will be able to see the file as if it were local.
Got it. Got it. Well, Ben, it's a different topic for another day, but one day I'll share with you how I created a CSV file from SQL, but it's ugly. It's going through PowerShell and well, I know it's not like select star into CSV. That'd be beautiful.
Yeah, I wish.
And
So
go ahead, Ben.
yeah, I was just going to say, what about selecting? Right now you're selecting from SQL into a list and then processing the list. What if you select from SQL and process that via RazorScript to produce the CSV? And under RazorScript, you'd be able to handle the quotation marks the way you want to. So do less passes.
Yes, but to do it through a RazorScript, I mean, unless I'm not thinking, the only way that I know of doing that is you would need two tokens. One of them is the database query token, and then the second is the RazorScript that will consume that database query token and loop through each record. So can I do that? Yes, I did that previously. That was like one of my very first iterations. The problem that I was coming across is that apparently, as I had spoken to you before, the database token, that query has a hard-coded limit of 10 seconds. If your query doesn't return the data back in 10 seconds, the whole entire process dies. And with the amount of data that I'm consuming here and processing, it's going to be more than 10 seconds.
Trying to remember what tools we have available here. So we have an execute razor tool. So but I suppose that again, you still need the data to pass it into it, which would be
I mean, the only other option I can think of is I would have to, or I could try in the database query token to paginate the return results. So 7.9 million records, if I paginate, let's say at 200,000 records and hope that 200,000 records comes back in 10 seconds, then I would have to keep paginating for every 200,000 records and keep compiling data for the CSV write. I mean, I think querying the local SQL database is going to be a lot faster than, obviously going back and forth with Oracle. I mean, once the data is in SQL, it should be a lot quicker, but I can't be 100% sure, especially for the fact that this is completely dynamic. And it depends on how much data is being returned. If they change the format, it could increase the time, and I could potentially cross that 10-second timeout.
So within a workflow, you have the ability to do a query timeout. So you could get beyond that if you return JSON here out of the query and then pass that into Razor to process. But now all your rows are in memory in JSON, and you're going from 7 million to 30 million. I don't know where that's going to go. You could test it out, but yep.
Yeah,
HTML.
I did the whole JSON thing too, and it's exactly what you said. What ends up happening is if I do that, then all that data gets thrown into memory. And I go from like where the website is using 300,000 K or 300K of memory, all of a sudden it jumps up to like 5.8 gigabytes.
So if you could make a connection to the SQL Server, I think you could process the data all in a Razor script, right? Your Razor script connects to SQL, grabs the data, and processes it out. I think I would investigate in that direction.
A Razor script has the ability to connect to a data
Razor
source
script,
directly?
yeah, Razor script can do anything that you can do in a .NET program, right? So if you provide the credentials into it to connect to it, I'm sorry, if the script has, I mean, you just have to need to bind to the SQL Server like any other C# program or VB.NET program.
So like if I use an OLADB data connector.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I will look into that. Thank you.
Sure. And consider strongly asking Chat GPT to write such a VB script for you.
Ooh, there's an idea. Finally, I'll get to play with it.
All right, we have 12 minutes for any other topic somebody brought. Sticking with the OpenAI theme for just a second, I'll just share one of the things that I've been using it to open doors for me. I never learned regular expressions. It's just kind of one of those, I didn't take the time to do it. And Chat GPT has been very good for saying, I need a regular expression to do this. And then, of course, in our tokens, we have the string tokens that have regex replace. So if you can get something that will build the match string for you, you can provide input and get output, and it's I've been able to get it to do lots of manipulation that I otherwise didn't know how to get done easily in low code. So that's a door opener.
That's good advice, Theo.
And don't forget the regex action also.
Well, there's a regex action in.
Yes.
Right. So I see having that's one of my blind spots. So let's see what that is. So it's
Three actions.
3 of them, but let's go to the one you were mentioning. So you input something, list of rules to parse the data. So these would be regular expressions.
Yes, so click add. Yep. And there's where you put your pattern in.
You put in a pattern and then the result of it goes to the token.
Yep.
So then you can do another one with that.
Right. So and I've done this also. Yep. You can double up those. You can take the token you just created and process it again.
So it is the token implicitly processed by the pattern?
Right. So your goal here is to take an input and get a value from it that you want to use later. That's the regex.
So you start with an input and then each pattern is applied and stored in.
Yeah.
So at the result at the end you get a token. Okay.
Yep. And the multiple results one is handy too, because you can then output multiple tokens.
Input, a pattern, and
right. Yeah, and it stores into CSV. Guess which one did I'm not seeing what I thought. Let me look at this here.
what else do we have?
Yeah, I think the one I've used is the first one. That's the one that I'm most familiar with.
Simple regex replace. So you've got input, a pattern, or a place that goes to a token. So this is really kind of another reveal of our very similar to the string replace token. I mean, replace regex. But might help you get around. Sometimes there's when you're trying to use a string, there's delimiter issues, quotes, no quotes, single quotes, depending on what your data is. I'll bet this would help you get around that. Interesting. All right, now I have more things to play with. All right. Any other, this is I guess we're doing dark corners, things that we didn't even know was in the product. So anybody else run into one of those recently, a new favorite dark corner? Okay, well, since you guys are getting quiet, I'll just throw in a little bit of the personal, what's going on, and then if it doesn't spur any discussion, we'll close out. Bogdan and I were together in Washington, D.C. and met up with Patrick as well. Patrick came in and saw us, and so we got to have dinner together. So that's one of those rarities that our virtual or our spread out company being able to get together a little bit. And aside from some sightseeing, which I think Patrick is going to help facilitate over the weekend, Bogdan then going to come down and we're going to introduce him to Texas culture and visit some clients in the Texas area as well. So good things happening. It's good. It's good for me to work together with him directly, and it reinforces what a bright guy he is. Very multi-track. I'm very single track, right? Trying to solve individual problems that's ahead of me, and so I'm glad to have him working on all the problems at once. It seems. Anyway, I'm very impressed with him and being able to work directly with him. And then after spending a couple of days here in Texas, in the Dallas area, in the Austin area, and he's going to go back to Romania after that. It's fun for me anyway.
Pretty cool. Pretty cool.
All right, well then with that, I think we will close out and momentarily go to our afterglow segment. So thanks for bringing the problem. Sometimes it feels like we get a problem and solve it in very brief time. And I'm sorry that today's wasn't that. It felt more like we just opened problems and not solved them. So we'll look forward to hearing solutions as time goes by. But thanks for spending your hour with us, and we will see you again next Friday on the Low Code Campfire.